Welcome to Filtered. A United States tanker seizure off Venezuela raises a bigger question. What happens to the world economy if major powers start intercepting ships as a routine tool of pressure? A new executive order targets state artificial intelligence laws, setting up a federal versus state showdown over who writes the rules. Vietnam's trade surplus with the United States hits a record despite tariffs, revealing how supply chains keep flowing anyway. And I'm reporting on the ground today from Vietnam. Elon Musk calls his Department of Government Efficiency effort only, quote, somewhat successful, and says he would not do it again. And the Senate deadlocks on Affordable Care Act subsidies, putting premium increases on track and reviving the never delivered promise of a replacement plan. All that and more today, right here on Filtered.
Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker.
Hi, and welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I'm TJ Walker. I'm recording this and doing it live on TikTok and other places on December 13th, 2025. So happy birthday to Taylor Swift. Happy birthday to Dick Van Dyke, who turns 100. And last but not least, happy birthday to me. Today is my birthday, and thank you to so many of you for sending your well wishes. I do appreciate that. Rather than share with you my wisdom of my time on Earth, I would like to put a spotlight on Dick Van Dyke, because he's a guy who is vital, just published a book. You still see him on award shows. He always looks happy. He does attribute just having a positive attitude. Now, there are those who roll their eyes and say, oh, isn't that cheesy advice? There's a lot of research showing going through life at every age with optimism does, in fact, doesn't guarantee, but it does increase your odds of living a full and longer life. Interesting thing about him is, as a younger man, he was an alcoholic, but has been off the sauce for decades and apparently has lived a very healthy lifestyle. Other interesting thing about him seems to be the very same weight his entire life. He's not one of these people who've gone like an accordion, way up and way down, and weight loss, massive weight gain. I do think there's something to be said about maintaining a healthy weight. Now, you could make the case he's been on the slim side most of his life, but very active dancer, and just seems to enjoy life. So Dick Van Dyke, congratulations to getting to that milestone of 100. Maybe at some point we get to the point where living to be 100, no big deal. But it is still statistically pretty rare to be 100. More common than it was, but still rare. And thanks to friends, family, and many of you for wishing me a happy birthday today. Let's dive right in with the top stories of the day. The first one, of course, is this ship seizure. One ship seizure can look like enforcement, but it can also become a blueprint for global chaos. The United States seizure of an oil tanker off Venezuela this week put a spotlight on something economists have been warning about for years. Oil is not just Venezuela's biggest export. It is the engine that funds basic government operations and pays for essentials like food and medicine, according to the Times and others. If seizure becomes more common, the economic pressure rises fast. Each cargo lost is a direct hit to revenue, and economists warn Venezuela could be forced to sell oil at cheaper discounts to traders still willing to take the risk. But the bigger problem is the precedent. If powerful countries begin intercepting commercial shipping whenever they dislike another government, global trade becomes less neutral, less predictable, and more expensive. That rise grows in a world where the United States is increasingly stepping back from being the default referee of open sea lanes. When there's no universally accepted traffic cop, every seizure becomes permission for the next one. Okay, what's the real message here? Yeah, some are rooting, way to go, America, taking over this ship from a country we don't like. But you know what it's called in other parts of the world? piracy. When you just take a ship, take all of its contents, do what you want with it, that's piracy. Our entire worldwide economy is based on the premise that that shouldn't happen anymore. Let's dig a little deeper here. Now, I'm not a supporter of the Venezuelan government. Let's be clear about that. But you don't have to be a supporter of a narco terrorist, if you consider them that, of an illegitimate government, a dictator, if you consider them that, to be a little bit troubled by this idea of one nation in the middle of the sea just taking over another boat, another cargo vessel, another shipping vessel, because they don't like something about that government. What very few people understand, which I didn't really realize until not that long ago, is how amazingly intertwined the global economy is. Now, it's fashionable these days among both the right and the left to denounce globalism, to denounce the neoliberal order. But okay, what do we have before that in 1945? We had countries very isolated, we had their economies isolated, and because of that, you often had massive starvation, massive disruption, a lot of civil wars because people were upset that current leadership couldn't feed the country. With globalization, with shipping being more or less completely open around the world and protected, thanks to the United States, economies got better. The whole world got wealthier. Was it completely equal? No. Was there increased inequality? Yes. But by and large, we went from from a world where about 90% of the world lived under the poverty line to today under 10%. That all happened in a span of just 70 years. It's been an amazing accomplishment when you look at the history, certainly of the last 6,000 years of humanity. It's almost beyond belief. It's a fantasy world. If you go back in a time machine to 1945 and say, okay, things are going to be very different than they were the last 6,000 years or even the last 100 years. We are going to see the elimination of billions of people living under poverty. We're going to see a lot fewer civil wars. Yes, I understand there's still civil wars. But we're going to see a dramatic elimination, a reduction of civil wars, starvation, misery. And it's going to be because of this thing called international trade, where you get to make something you're good at, put it on a boat, send it over here, sell it to people in another country. Sometimes, not always, sometimes they'll put stuff they make on a boat, send it back to you, and you buy it. That has been the basis of global capitalism. It's why the United States is rich, but it's why across the globe, not all people, but most people in most countries are much better off. So it's very tempting to say, well, this is a one-off. The United States is powerful. They have the right to protect their citizens, and Venezuela is sending us drugs. Okay. But you know what? If Americans didn't buy these drugs, they wouldn't send them here. If Americans could actually lead productive lives, maybe exercise, maybe have friends, maybe get off their cell phone for a few minutes, they wouldn't be so depressed they'd have to take fentanyl or cocaine, whatever the drugs are coming from Venezuela. They wouldn't have to take them. As far as I can tell, the president of Venezuela is not coming to the United States, knocking on your front door, putting a gun to your head, saying, now, here's this syringe, shoot up now. They're not doing that. Is he perhaps willingly, knowingly that his people are selling drugs and some of that money's got? I have no doubt. But that's a separate issue from one country taking over possession of transport vehicles. It's not a sexy issue. It's not a sexy topic. This video is not going to go viral and make 10 million views. But it is important. Let's look at some more facts in this case because it is important. Shipping stability dies when power replaces rules. Now, what we've been hearing from Washington, certainly for the last 11 months, but on and off from certain quarters for the last decade is we don't want to be the world's policeman. Okay, you're on your own, other countries. Well, people just don't realize how much the United States economy has benefited, how many business people, how many farmers, how many manufacturers in the United States have benefited from the fact that, other than the occasional Somali pirate, if you create a product in the United States and you send it to Singapore by boat or Japan or any place else, you don't have to think about, there's a 50-50 chance it'll get there because there's a 50% chance some pirate will just take over the ship and take all my stuff and I'm ended up with nothing. You didn't have to worry about that. That's made United States entrepreneurs, farmers, business people richer. It's also made the rest of the world richer. Everyone has benefited from that rule. And I realize it's not fashionable to stand up for the New World Order, for the liberal order, for the neoliberal order, for the status quo system that the elites created. I realize I'm not going to get 10,000 thumbs up on this video for saying that. Doesn't mean it's not true. The other thing is when you start cutting off ships to certain countries, you can destroy their economy. Now, you could say, well, that's great. We want to destabilize Venezuela. Okay, what happens when 1 million Venezuelans are knocking on the door, trying to swim across the Rio Grande? Maybe you catch 900,000 of them. But there's another 100,000 that were willing to risk anything, risk their lives to get out of starvation situation in Venezuela. Now, what happens when you duplicate this across the world, country after country after country, destabilization, because shipping lanes have shot down. Now, again, we in the United States are lucky. We grow our own food. We're a net exporter of food, and this wasn't always true, we're a net exporter of energy. So if the United States becomes relatively cut off from the rest of the world, yeah, it'll hurt. It'll be inconvenient. Our stock prices will take a hit, but by and large, we'll be okay. But that's not true for most of the world. Most of the world is so interconnected to worldwide commerce, specifically through shipping, because it's just much cheaper to send things in a giant cargo container on a giant barge than it is to fly stuff around the world. And whether you're Japan, whether you're China, whether you're almost anywhere, you need stuff coming into your country. You need stuff going out of your country. So make no mistake about it. This seizure of a ship can have all sorts of unintended consequences. Now, conservatives like to bemoan the fact that liberals often don't think through their actions. Well, you want to have this welfare program to give people free housing. Think about the unintended consequences. It could give people incentives not to work because you'll give them a house. We hear that all the time from conservatives. Here's the thing. They're not wrong. There are often unintended consequences when the hand of big government takes some action that in isolation might make sense, but sets a precedent, unloads all sorts of triggering effects that are in fact quite negative. And I'm not making predictions here, but I do accept the idea that this is potentially a warning shot. This is potentially very, very negative. You can make the case that Maduro is awful, awful, awful. Fine, not arguing with you there. But you can also make the case that this could have a triggering effect in essentially sending a message to any nation. Hey, forget about the United States. They'll do whatever they want. Now this is interesting. I'm broadcasting this live right now on TikTok. I just received a violation warning. Your live is flagged for misinformation. Well, if TikTok or anyone else would care to tell me what that misinformation is, I would love to know. Those of you watching me on TikTok, please let me know. I understand I've said some things that someone might not agree with, They may dispute my reasoning, but I don't believe I've said anything that is factually correct or incorrect at this point. Oops, hope that wasn't a Freudian slip. So if you detect anything I said that was deliberate misinformation, please let me know. I would love to know. Some other facts of the situation. China is a major buyer of Venezuelan oil now. Well, this oil is going to China. Are they going to feel entitled, obligated to reciprocate? Did they take an oil tanker owned by a U.S. company, figuring, well, tit for tat? They took oil that was coming to us that we'd already paid for. If that's this, and I'm not making that allegation about this tanker. So we have the right to take theirs. It is troubling. Now, according to Francisco Rodriguez, an economist at the University of Denver, he told the New York Times, continued seizures would cause a deep decline in Venezuela's import capacity. Now, this is a problem because the resulting drop in import capacity could push Venezuela into an even greater recession, depression, because fewer dollars mean fewer necessities arriving. Again, you can say, great, we want to destabilize this regime, but what if there's nothing better? What if the next leader's worse? Sometimes we don't think about that. Other costs associated that you might have to pay, and I might have to pay, if it becomes standard policy for ships to be taken over, pirated by other governments or non-government entities, think of how the insurance premiums are going to go up on shipping. Think of how much less reliable things are. You know how you and I are kind of lazy and we don't want to go to the shopping mall? Again, we need a product the day after tomorrow. It's Friday night and you forgot to get that thing for your kid's school project. You push a button on Amazon and it's there by Sunday. Guess what? That might not happen if intercepting ships because you don't like the leadership of that country becomes the new normal. So once again, you can call me too conservative if you like. I happen to think conservatives are correct when they state oftentimes when government officials take an action, they don't look at the unintended consequences of their action, and they either make one problem worse or they maybe help a little bit with one problem, but they create 10 more problems that are even bigger. And that's the problem I see with these seizures of boats from regimes we don't happen to like. I'm TJ Walker. This is Filtered. Back in a moment.
Filtered is brought to you by the following. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Want to become a better speaker, leader, or communicator? Start with the TJ Walker Success Library. It's 5 of my most practical books, covering everything from public speaking to media interviews and persuasive messaging, all for only $9.95. I've trained presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, and now you can get the same wisdom in a fast, affordable format. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download your copies instantly. Thanks for listening. If you like today's episode, you'll love my online courses at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Check them out now and level up your skills.
Welcome back to Filtered. Executive order targets state artificial intelligence laws. This is not an argument about technology. It's an argument about who gets to control the rule book. An executive order signed at the White House aims to limit state laws regulating artificial intelligence, arguing that a 50-state patchwork creates confusion and slows growth. According to the New York Times, the order gives the Attorney General broad authority to challenge state laws and pressure states by tying compliance to certain federal funding. So if you want to perhaps put an age gate on Facebook to people under the age of 16, if you're, let's say, New York, then the Attorney General could say, oh, we're going to take away all your federal funds for highways or for Medicare. That's a pretty big stick. Supporters say one national framework is logical and necessary, especially if the United States wants to stay ahead of China in artificial intelligence development. Critics say the problem is timing. States passed many of these laws because Congress had not acted. If state guardrails are wiped away before a strong national standard exists, the practical outcome may be fewer protections in the near term, especially for consumers and children. Okay, what's the real message here? Across the country, people are calling their state legislators and governors saying, get this AI garbage filth out of the eyes of our kids, pass a law to restrict it. And governors, Republicans and Democrats alike, are saying, yes, we agree, let's pass this law. Now, Trump is saying, time out. All these billionaires are giving me lots of money to rebuild the White House and run my campaign. So, no, I'm going to side with them, not your actual constituents. I'm going to let AI do whatever they want. Let's dig a little deeper here. That's it in a nutshell. Now, let me be intellectually honest here. Yes, there is a case to be made that artificial intelligence is so powerful, so important, that any country that gets to be dominant in it will control the whole world. Think about this. If your artificial intelligence is so powerful, if you could then create a drone that could go in and take out any other country's military, their nuclear arsenal, their leadership, and yours is smarter than everyone else, and you could do it, you would have complete control over the world. Therefore, it's pretty important to try to become first at artificial intelligence if you care about protecting your own nation, your own citizenry. And if you don't want to be, an evil dictator for the world, it's also important that you not be number two, because that means someone else will have complete control over the world if artificial intelligence actually gets to the point of general artificial intelligence. That's the theory, and it's a pretty compelling theory. So even if you don't want to take over the world for some nefarious purpose, you have a vested interest, whether you're a leader of a country or a citizen of a country, to not let some other country get there first. So that would be an argument in favor of what Trump is doing, saying, hey, I'm listening to my boys, Mark Andreessen and others, who say we don't want any competition that's slowing us down. We don't want any roadblocks. We just want to go full steam ahead and do whatever it takes to grow this thing quickly and become supreme. He's listening to that argument. What is troubling to some people across the ideological spectrum, whether you're Elizabeth Warren or Ted Cruz, is you've got constituents saying, we want to be protected from this. It's powerful now. It's corrupting our children now. Our children are falling in love with these chatbots that are encouraging them to do physical harm to themselves. And it's a problem. And that is a very legitimate problem, as documented by some of the case studies with character AI. So it's a very real problem. So there's a real conflict. Muddying the waters is people looking at this administration saying, are they really making this decision based on what they truly believe is in the best interest of the citizenry? Or are they doing it because that's what the big money contributors are telling them to do? If you notice this last inauguration, who was sitting behind Trump at the inauguration? Was it the heads of various citizen watchdog groups? No. Was it various representatives of mental health organizations protecting teenagers? No. It was billionaires who were spending billions on artificial intelligence. It was the CEOs of Facebook and Apple and Amazon and all of these big guys who got all the money. So there are many, again, across the political spectrum in America, who feel that this decision is being made not for the public interest, but for cronies. The idea, okay, you give me billions of dollars for my campaign, you give me hundreds of millions of dollars to put gold leaf all over the White House. You give me hundreds of millions of dollars to help me build this giant ballroom for the White House. Okay, it's pay to play. You're paying and I'll play and you'll play and you'll get what you want. That is the big problem here. Now, let's look at some more facts of the situation. There are a number of states that have passed laws on deep fakes and elections. You can't simply put out news saying your team won the election, even if it didn't, to try to foment anger and revolution. States have passed laws on chatbots and disclosures. States have passed laws on safety testing and reporting. A lot of these laws are now vulnerable because of what the administration is doing. And if they can't legally force you to get rid of the laws, they can use the carrot and stick approach and say, hey, nice set of highways you got there in your state, Massachusetts. Be a shame if something happened to them and you never got another penny of funding to repair. That'd be a real shame, wouldn't it? That's the problem. Now, according to the White House, they've said it's got to be one source. You can't go to 50 different sources. I understand if you are an AI company, you'd much rather deal with one set of rules. The whole world can't be based on what is the easiest thing for billionaires to make more billions of dollars with. That can't be the only rationale. Now, according to Wes Hodges of the Conservative Heritage Foundation, he said, doing so before establishing national protections is a big carve-out for big tech. He's arguing a federal override should come with enforceable national rules. Otherwise, the winners are the companies with the least oversight. So, again, here's what I'm trying to get across. This is not a typical left-right issue. This is not Elizabeth Warren saying you're making billionaires richer and everyone on the right saying, you want a big nanny state. It's not like that. You've got the Heritage Foundation, you've got Ted Cruz and others saying, we want states to be able to have the right to protect their own people. And so this is not a simple left-right issue, which frankly is why I'm here. Filtered with TJ Walker is a show about looking at top stories of the world affecting you and then analyzing the issues, filtering them through the lens of messages, the underlying messages, communication, and personal development, so that you have a better understanding of what's really going on, and so that you can be more successful yourself. Now, the critics of the states regulating saying this patchwork stuff is a problem, it's slowing things down, but there are problems with just letting AI do whatever they want. And it's going, oops, we didn't mean to encourage 1 million teenagers to start cutting themselves. Oops, sorry. There's real harm in something like that happening. I'm not suggesting it's been 1 million, but there are issues there, shall we say, with Facebook, not just through AI, but just how they systematically encourage people to think ill of themselves for not having as much stuff and not looking as good as certain other people. This issue is not going away. We'll see what the feds do next, but it's also going to be interesting to see what the pushback is at the state level, not just the Democratic states, my friends, but the Republican states as well. Back in just a moment.
Like what you heard? Don't let the algorithm bury us. Subscribe now at substack.com/@TJWalkerSuccess. Want direct access to me live? Want to unlock bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes takes, and full access to my premium courses? Then become a member today. Just go to tjwalker.com/members and choose your preferred platform, YouTube, Patreon, whatever works for you. This isn't just another subscription. It's a full access pass to the tools, coaching, and content that can transform your communication and career. tjwalker.com/members. I'll see you inside. Before we dive in, quick question. Are your communication skills helping or hurting your career? Fix that in 20 minutes a day. Visit MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Real skills, real results.
Okay, let's move on over to Vietnam, where I happen to be right now, and I've been here all week. Fascinating country. They are in the news recently. Tariffs were supposed to slow Vietnam down, but the numbers say the export machine is still running hot. Reuters reports that Vietnam's trade surplus with the United States rose to a record $121.6 billion in the first 11 months of the year as exports surged despite tariffs imposed in August on Vietnamese goods. Year over year, exports to the United States rose sharply, outpacing shipments to other markets. But month to month, exports to the United States have fallen for several consecutive months, suggesting the pace may be cooling even as the overall surplus remains historically high. Vietnam's trade deficit with China also widened significantly, reinforcing the modern reality. Many Vietnam exports still depend on supply chains and inputs tied to China. So, what's the real message here? What's truly important? These tariffs imposed from Washington are either having no impact or a negative impact on a lot of parts of the world. The reality is, every place in the world wants to send their stuff and bring stuff in. Very few countries are isolated in a bubble saying, oh, we got everything we need right here. Vietnam is a perfect example of that. They are manufacturing, sending their goods all over the world, but they can't make it all on their own. They have to import so many products. They're shipping, their ports are full, they're brimming over. More and more comes in and goes out every single day. Okay, let's look at some more of the facts. The tariffs imposed in August, 20% on Vietnamese goods. Exports to the United States rose 22.5% year over year. Now, it is true, exports fell 7.1% month to month in November. Shipments to the United States fell 7.3% month to month, according to Reuters. The fourth straight month of month-to-month decline to the United States. But overall, November trade surplus, $1.09 billion. Keep in mind, it's not a problem having a trade surplus or a deficit. I have a deficit situation with local Starbucks. They have a surplus situation. They sell me their stuff. They're not buying my books and online courses. They're not. I'm buying their stuff. So it's not a balance. You don't want that. It's called comparative advantage. Adam Smith talks about it. If you're a conservative or you consider yourself a capitalist, and I do consider myself a centrist capitalist, you have to believe in the idea of comparative advantage. And the United States has many, many advantages. We have advantages of the best universities in the world, more capital, the dollar itself, our geography. We have many, many advantages. But Vietnam has advantages too. These people really, really want to work hard. They are, frankly, hungrier than Americans are. I was walking down the streets here in Saigon yesterday. A gentleman comes up and says, I'll shine your shoe. I'll do the best job possible. He was so aggressive. He seemed very passionate. I almost hired him. And then I looked down. I was wearing tennis shoes. My tennis shoes didn't need jogging shoes. They didn't need to shine. But he was so hungry, literally and metaphorically, to be a part of the capitalistic system, to be a part of the trading system. He was aggressively marketing himself. And that's the thing that, frankly, a lot of people in the United States have lost. Now, I'll admit it. I'm not aggressive enough to walk up to a total stranger and to try to sell them a service when they haven't asked for it, especially if there's not an immediate need, like selling shoe shine to someone wearing tennis shoes. But the Vietnamese and many around the world have that aggressive nature. Now, I was on a tour yesterday going through Vietnam, and I see the giant Ho Chi Minh statues. Ho Chi Minh, the communist. It's officially a communist nation. There's a big statue of him in the town square, the main downtown part of Saigon. And you know what? That's how it works. When you win the wars, you're the hero. You go in the record books, and you essentially get the last laugh. You get to write history the way you want it. But then I looked around. What did I see? In a 360-degree tour, and I'll perhaps show you pictures and video of it next week. Everywhere in this town square where Ho Chi Minh, the communist founder of the nation, hero of the nation, leader, past leader of the nation, where he is held in esteem with this giant monument, every place around him, 10 feet higher, 20 feet higher, 30 feet higher, 40 feet higher, were all the ads and billboards for the companies around him selling their goods. And guess what? They were all luxury brands from America and from Europe. Every single major fashion designer, every major, particularly $30,000 watch store. It was a monument, not just to capitalism, but to capitalistic companies catering to not just the top 1%, but the top 0.1% in many aspects, not just of Vietnamese culture, but of worldwide culture. You got to be pretty rich to spend $100,000 on a watch. And that's what was completely surrounding Ho Chi Minh. So it made me reflect on who really won the war. Yeah, you get a statue, but it sure seems like capitalism and the big-time capitalist really ended up winning in the long term. Because everywhere I turn in Vietnam this week, people are actively trying to be a part of the capitalistic system. They're all selling products, services. They want money. They like American products. They like American dollars. They're certainly, whether they like me personally or not, but they're very, very nice to someone like me. So the idea that we want to tell them, no, don't be a part of the capitalistic world. I mean, we were here in this country saying, communism's bad. We're going to help you fight these bad old communists. We want you to create products, let the private market decide things, not big government. And here we are using the power of big government to put tariffs on them. It is wildly, wildly contradictory. Some more facts about the situation here. This is according to Vietnam's finance minister in his discussions with Reuters. Foreign investment inflows rose 8.9% this year to $23.6 billion. And Reuters is reporting this investment remains strong even as officials warned of growing challenges from tariffs and things like flooding. So yeah, there are problems here, like there are in every country. The tariffs are not helping. They're not helping Americans. They're not helping the Vietnamese. They're just another impediment. It is an impediment to free enterprise. Part of the concept of free markets, free enterprise, is fewer unnecessary roadblocks. And these tariffs are, in fact, unnecessary, unhelpful, which is one reason why we're seeing inflation in America go up. And, what was going to happen day one of this new administration? Well, it seems like everyone has forgotten about that. I'm TJ Walker. More news in just a moment.
Hey, if you're enjoying this kind of take and want to hear more stories filtered through the lens of communication, make sure you're following the show, whether you're watching or listening. New episodes drop every single day. And if there's a little notification option where you are now, go ahead and turn it on. It helps you stay in the loop.
Musk calls Doge only somewhat successful. Okay. I'm glad to see there's at least some sense of self-awareness there. If the man who ran the cut says it was only somewhat successful, this is not a trophy, it's an admission. Elon Musk said the Department of Government efficiency effort was only somewhat successful and that he would not do it again, according to reporting from The Guardian. Well, that's nice to know. Would have been nice if he'd figured this out about 11 months ago. The article describes large-scale layoffs and buyouts across the federal workforce, plus disputed claims about savings because public accounting was limited. Now the critique. Once you get past the original script, is that the project focused on the easiest kind of cutting, visible headcount disruption. The hardest cost drivers in the federal budget are not office workers. They are structural commitments and politically protected policies, things that Musk didn't have the nerve to touch. If you really want deficit reduction, you go after the biggest levers. That can mean things like pushing much harder on prescription drug pricing, the purchasing power of the federal government. The federal government doesn't want to do that. They'd upset their friends at big pharma and big insurance companies. Scaling reforms that reduce medical cost inflation, or revising expensive tax expenditures that function like spending. Things like including the mortgage interest deduction, things that benefit me personally, but not most people in America, certainly not the bottom third of the country, because they can't afford any housing. They don't get those goodies in the form of tax subsidies. Now, these are the sorts of things that have long been criticized for delivering disproportionate benefits to high-income homeowners. And of course, Musk just turned a blind eye. Instead, the efforts became a spectacle of chainsaw symbolism, while the biggest budget items stayed largely untouched. So what's the real message here? Elon Musk now belatedly saying, oops, maybe this whole Doge thing was kind of a mistake. I wouldn't do it over again. You think? Now we're just figuring that out. I mean, imagine if Elon Musk had said, TJ, you don't know anything about the car industry or electronic vehicles or autonomous vehicles. I'm just going to hire you to be the acting CEO for 3 months of Tesla. And I drove it into the ground. And I just eviscerated the market cap by 90%. And I said, oops, I probably wouldn't be the acting CEO again. What would you think? I think he would think, well, TJ, you're a fool for even assuming you could take on a job like that. You're right, I would be. That's why I wouldn't take that job. I try not to take jobs where I have zero credibility, zero understanding of what it is. And yet Musk did that. Unfortunately, this is a problem with our culture. We lionize billionaires. We think, okay, this guy is smart enough to be successful in one niche here. He must have general intelligence to be smart on everything. No, it's never been that way. Henry Ford was really smart at creating an assembly line. He became really rich, and he made cars for the masses. Do we then want to listen to his advice on the Jews? I don't think so. He was a well-known anti-Semite and wasted a lot of his time, money, and energy spouting anti-Semitic nonsense. Now, I'm not saying Elon Musk is an anti-Semite. I'm saying he is equally incompetent at most things, the way most human beings are incompetent at most things. Some people are really, really good at one thing. Some, like Elon Musk, are really a handful of things. He didn't found Tesla, but he really made it into something significant. SpaceX, he's had a number of successes, but they're all narrowly related to technology. They have nothing to do with government, nothing to do with actually helping people in need. He's been good at one thing. And now he's belatedly admitting the whole thing was kind of well thought out, not really a good idea. Now, he's still grading himself on a curve. He told The Guardian that he was somewhat successful. I guess you at least have to give him credit, because anytime Anyone has asked Donald Trump about how successful he was about anything, he says, #1 in the world, best ever. People are saying the greatest in the universe. At least Elon Musk didn't do that. He's also admitting that he wouldn't do it again. Now, if you were somewhat successful at something, why wouldn't you do it again? He's citing 75,000 buyouts. There's no evidence whatsoever this has made the government more efficient. If you've been to the airport recently and your flights were delayed 5 hours and there was no bad weather, are you feeling like the government's more efficient? I don't think so. The fact that certain air traffic controllers were fired, laid off, hired back again, some of them with paid vacations, does that really make you feel better about the government? I don't think so. So the real lesson here, I think, from a human psychology standpoint, and we're all guilty of this, is this authority bias. We think someone's an authority figure in one aspect of life. Okay, you're the richest man in the world. People love money. We are largely a capitalist world. So if you're the richest man in the world, ergo, you're the smartest guy in the world, you can solve any problem. Therefore, here, you're now in charge of the federal government. That's what happened. And it's fallacious thinking. It is unsound. By that logic, if you have a brain tumor, if he's the smartest guy in the world, why not just hand him a scalpel and have him perform surgery? So what? He didn't go to medical school. So what? He didn't major in biology. He's the smartest guy in the world. Let him operate on your child or your spouse. It would be that asinine. That's essentially what this administration did by giving the reins of the government to Elon Musk. Again, the real waste, when you look at how many weapon systems are given billions of dollars every single year, and our own experts at the Defense Department or the Pentagon say, we don't need these. We don't want them. It's all waste. But the congressman saying, well, they're building 1/10 of their factory in my district, and I want those jobs, therefore we can't cut it. I mean, that's where the real waste in government is. And of course, the biggest waste of all is our healthcare system, which we're going to be talking about in the next topic here on the show. But the easiest way to eliminate massive government waste, fraud, and abuse is to do what most successful capitalistic systems do for their health care. They spend their money efficiently. They spend roughly 50% less than America does on health care. And they free up billions, trillions of dollars more for their economy for productive uses. But no, that would offend a number of powerful constituencies to suggest that. If you're Elon Musk, it's too complicated. You can't take a chainsaw and show a picture of a health insurance executive, especially in the current climate, and I wouldn't recommend that. But that's why the federal government is as big and as bloated as ever. I'm TJ Walker. You're watching Filtered. Thanks so much for joining me today. We have more stories coming up. You're not going to want to miss this next story as we do talk specifically about what is going on in the healthcare arena with the Senate and what's going to happen to insurance premiums coming up in the new year. All that and more in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Filtered is brought to you by the following. Get the deeper takes I don't post anywhere else. Subscribe now at substack.com/@TJ Walker Success and stay in the loop. For years, people have asked how they could get one-on-one coaching from me inexpensively. Well, now you can, anytime, anywhere with the TJ Walker AI clone. It's like having me in your pocket, ready to help you prep for a speech, polish a pitch, or calm your nerves before a big meeting. You talk to it, it responds like I would, based on my real-world coaching of thousands of leaders and communicators. Check it out at tjwalker.ai. It's not just smart, it's personal. Want to support the show? Skip the ads and buy me a coffee. That's buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker.
Hi, and welcome. Thanks for joining us back. In the news, once again, healthcare. Health insurance premiums are about to rise, and Washington just proved it still cannot decide what it wants the system to be. The Senate deadlocked on competing proposals related to expiring Affordable Care Act subsidies, according to the Times. Democrats pushed to extend the subsidies. You may have remembered that during the shutdown. Republicans offered an alternative approach centered on health savings accounts and direct payments for basic plans. Neither reached the 60 votes needed to advance. This reopens a long-running political reality. Republicans have promised an alternative to the Affordable Health Care Act for roughly 15 years. The promise of a replacement has been repeated for about a decade by President Trump as well. We're going to come up with something much, much better, much greater, cheaper, and it's coming soon. He's been saying that for a decade. But there's never been a stable, detailed consensus replacement or Republican replacement enacted or even mentioned beyond a simple talking point. When you strip away all slogans, the menu of real health system structures is kind of limited. A single-payer approach like many wealthy countries use, that's one option. A mixed public-private option like the Affordable Health Care Act, so-called Obamacare, which preserves a large role for insurers, or continued fragmentation, essentially nothing, where costs remain high, coverage remains uneven, and premiums keep rising. Meanwhile, the United States spends far more on health care than peer economies by share of the economy, while often underperforming on outcomes. Okay, what's the real message here? Once again, the Senate couldn't come up with a solution to healthcare premiums that are about to double for 20 million Americans coming up in the next year. They're still waiting on this new Republican healthcare plan that's going to solve all the problems. Guess what? It didn't come 10 years ago. It didn't come 5 years ago. It didn't come today. It's never coming. There is no plan. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. Okay, this is where I consider myself a true conservative, not one of these fake conservatives. I like to conserve money from my own pocketbook. I like to conserve money from the pocketbook of the federal government. How do you do that? One of the things we hear from conservatives all the time is, these liberals, these progressives, they live in their theoretical ivory tower. They don't look at what really works in the real world. Well, I do look at what works in the real world. Look at the other G7 nations. I'm not talking about Cuba. I'm not talking about Venezuela. I'm talking about wealthy, prosperous nations. Wealthy, prosperous, capitalistic nations. What do? They provide health care for all of their citizens. In the very same way, we provide military protection for all of our citizens. We provide federal roads for our citizens. We provide public education through the 12th grade to our citizens. We do it as a society through the government. So they do it, and they spend trillions of dollars less money than the United States does in the aggregate. Most civilized, capitalistic, rich countries that you might want to live in someday and certainly visit, they spend about $6,500 a year per person on health care. And because we believe in the free market system, because we don't want evil socialized medicine, we spend $13,000 per person on average. So yes, theirs is 50% less than what ours is. Ours is 100% more than what they spent. If you're good at math, you figured that out. So that's why I consider myself a conservative. I don't like wasting money. It would be far more efficient for the United States government to end this deluded fantasy that we live in a free market, privatized healthcare system. We don't. Our healthcare system is already socialized. It's just socialized to give a lot of health insurance companies more money, a lot of doctors more money, a lot of marketers more money, and to stick it to you with the tab. That's what we have. So, believe it or not, President Trump is not wrong. He's occasionally right. He's not wrong when he says Obamacare was a giveaway to the big insurance companies. Well, it was, because guess what? If you go from the system we had 15 years ago, 10 years ago, even today, to moving automatically in one day or 1 week to a system of the government paying for it the way they do in Canada and Great Britain and most of Europe, boom, you do completely decimate the insurance industry. You put millions out of work, and a lot of them are really rich and powerful and vote and give campaign contributions. So it's completely true that Obamacare is sort of this hybrid way of trying to keep people happy in the short term. So that part is on, but it's not honest when Trump and all the Republicans continue to say, well, we have a plan. It's coming soon. It's been coming for 15 years. They've never once come up with it. So a little fundamental education here, folks. If you live in the real world, as conservatives claim they do, if your head is out of the ivory tower and you're looking at what actually works in the real world, there's 3 types of healthcare systems in the world. There's the single payer plan, where just as you already do for national defense and police protection and roads and parks and schools, you have the government as the main purchaser to give most people what they need. And then for the very wealthy, they can opt out and get some private care. That's one option. That's what most successful capitalistic economies do. You've got another option where there's this mix of public-private, where there's insurance companies and there's some subsidies going back and forth. That's what Obamacare was. And you can make the case that's kind of what Switzerland does, a few other places. And then you've got what most of the developing world has, which is, hey, you're on your own. If you're poor, just die. Let's go back to the way the world was from about 6000 BC to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and you just die at age 30, 33. You get a cut, an infection, no health care, no antibiotics, just die. That's kind of the third option. So that's the world we live in. And to continue to say there's some easy private sector solution, there isn't. There absolutely isn't. Now, you could take the exact same attitude and say, hey, I've got a plan to save hundreds of billions of dollars of American taxpayers. Hey, that sounds pretty good, TJ. What's your plan? Maybe we have you run for Congress. Here's my plan. I want to get rid of the big, bloated government waste of police departments in America and state highway patrols and the FBI. I want to get rid of all that. It's all government bureaucrats. It's all a bunch of lazy people on the government payroll. Let's fire all of them and let's just privatize security. It works fine for Mitt Romney. You may remember the former senator was getting a lot of death threats because he had the goal to vote to impeach President Trump in the first term. So he had a solution. He had a nice private sector solution. He spent $5,000 a day of his own money because he's worth $500 million. And he hired private security guards to follow him and his family around and his, 189 grandchildren. Presumably some of them needed protection. And they were kept safe. As far as I know, nothing bad happened to him. He had private security. He spent $5,000. If it works for Mitt Romney, why couldn't it work for you? What? Oh, You're telling me you don't have $5,000 a day to spend on private security. Okay. Wow, I hadn't thought of that. Maybe there's some flaws in my rationale. Well, guess what? Is ridiculous as I just sounded there, that is essentially the argument against national health care. Now, I understand politically, if you're a Democrat, you say, "Oh, DJ, don't talk about national health care. That's going to make the voters angry, and they're going to think we're socialist. They're going to think we're Fidel Castro if we talk about socialized health care. Don't talk about it, TJ." Well, I'm not here trying to help any one party. I'm here telling you straight what is really going on in the world. And what's going on in the world is you're being played. You're being played like a fiddle by politicians. In this case, with respect to health care, it is by politicians who want to scare you and waste your money and steal your money at the same time. And Republicans who have done nothing but denounce Obamacare for the last 15 years and saying, "Oh, we got something better coming up, private sector." Well, let's be clear on what the private sector is. It's going to be exactly the same private sector solution that Mitt Romney has for police protection for his family. It's called pull out your checkbook and write a check for $5,000 a day. Now, at some point, if I told you I'm running on a platform of balancing the budget and I've got a plan telling you exactly what I'm going to cut, and 15 years later, 10 years, 15 years later, I haven't told you a single thing I'm going to cut, at some point, I think you would say, "Well, TJ, you're a fraud. We don't believe you. You've had opportunity after opportunity to tell us one thing you would cut in the federal government, and you've never done it. So you have no credibility on the issue of reducing government spending and bringing about a balanced budget." You would be absolutely right. But for some reason, people give Trump and the Republicans a free pass on this health care issue. Well, I think that's about to end come January. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to Democrats. Don't listen to MSNBC. Just listen to people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Republican congresswoman from Northwest Georgia, and the situation with her own children who are about to see their health care costs double. She has children in the mid-20s. Presumably they're not wealthy yet. They didn't get all the great stock buying tips that Marjorie Taylor Greene has had in recent years. So they're not rich, and we're going to see a lot of Americans just like them seeing their health care cost go up 100%. And this time, the message is owned by the Republicans. And I got to tell you, there are a lot of Democrats who are saying publicly, "Oh, it's awful that so many Americans, tens of millions of Americans, are losing their health care. And it's awful that we tried to shut down the government and the Republicans didn't give us what we want because it's really going to hurt tens of millions of Americans who are going to lose health care because they can't afford it anymore." But privately, I'm going to tell you what they're thinking. They're thinking, "Oh, this is fantastic. This is going to help us so much in the 2026 elections." There are going to be tens of millions of Americans who either didn't vote in 2024 or voted for Republicans, and they're going to be so angry. They're going to be poor. They are not going to be able to sleep at night because they no longer have health insurance. So they realize they're only one car accident away. They're one diagnosis away from bankruptcy, losing their home, and going from the middle class to a wretched poverty state. And those people are either not going to vote for Republicans again and stay at home, or they're going to vote for Democrats. So I'm just telling you like it is. There are a lot of Democrats who, frankly, think it's bad for the country, but think it's the best thing that has ever happened to the Democratic Party, what's going to happen next year, with so many people realizing, all this rhetoric about government waste, yeah, I buy into it until my healthcare costs go up an extra $1,000 a month. Now it's getting real, and now it's getting painful. So that's what's happening with these subsidies, because it's not a matter of Democrats somehow compromising. It's a matter of basic math. Again, there's three types of healthcare in the real world. If you actually get out of the ivory tower, if you get out of the Hoover Institute or the Claremont Institute or the Milton Friedman School of Ivory Towers in Chicago, there's only three solutions to healthcare. Government pays, you got some mixed system, which Obamacare is, or you're on your own, die. Those are the three choices. And there's no amount of speeches, sound bites that can really change that reality. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks for joining me. That concludes sort of the main section of our show. I am going to switch over to our final segment, which is where I take questions from you. At the end of every show, we try to get away from the news. I mean, sometimes the news can be a downer, let's face it. I like to get away from the news, talk about more uplifting things. So I take questions from you, specifically my students. Now, if you're new to the show and you don't know who I am, my name is TJ Walker, and for the last 40 years, I've coached tens of thousands of executives, billionaires, political leaders, Miss Universes, you name it, on how to be more successful in their communication and in their personal development. I have 300 online courses that have a combined 12 million student enrollment. So these questions come from my students. This one comes from Sophia. She is a student in my personal development, personal transformation course. And she says, why is time blocking an effective method for reducing procrastination? Well, Sophia, here's why. If you tell yourself, I'm not going to focus on just one thing right now, it's too easy to sort of flit around from, oh, let me answer this email. Let me respond to this text. Let me do a little research on this report I'm supposed to do for the boss. You spend so much time floating around. Every single time you do it, there's a transition cost. Your brain cannot change that quickly. There's a reset time. So you're going from an email to a text to, oh, I better find out what's happening on LinkedIn. Maybe one of my prospects said something and I should like their comment. All of these things may have some tiny, tiny marginal value. But when you put them together in, let's say, a typical morning, you come to the office at 8 a.m. and you say, well, let me have a slow start and check an email, respond to a text. Before you realize it, it's lunchtime. You haven't accomplished a thing. When you time block and you say, I'm going to do just this one thing, you eliminate all the wastefulness of the transition cost of opening one web page, closing the other, going from a laptop to a text on a phone, and you allow yourself to go deeper. One of the things I love doing about this show is it's great automatic enforced time blocking for me. When I'm doing a show for you, I'm not responding to text. I can't. My phone is in use doing my TikTok live. I can't check my email. I'm focused on you. So I urge you, whatever it is you do, figure out how to do it at least for an hour. If you're writing a book or doing something creative, give yourself a true time block of at least 4 hours. Believe it or not, the world will not end if you don't get back to an email or a text response from a friend or a family member. They will understand. So, Sophia, thanks so much for asking the question. Thank you for watching today. I'm leaving today. I'm right now still in Vietnam, headed to Taiwan later today. I'll be broadcasting from Taiwan tomorrow there for the rest of the week. Again, happy birthday, Dick Van Dyke. Happy birthday, Taylor Swift. And happy birthday, me. See you tomorrow.